Right, so how many people have used Xamarin Forms before? A few people? How many people like Xamarin Forms? Cool. I thought that was like a half one. And that's pretty good. Okay, so just a little bit about me. I do Xamarin all day and night with a few other people. We have a few open source toolkits. We've got an MVVM framework for Xamarin Forms, which we use internally and we use every day and we love it. So it's all on GitHub. We've got another framework which is used to do slide overs and menus in Xamarin Forms. And Fresh Essentials, which is another, the Xamarin Forms toolkit that we use. This is us putting back to the open source community, something that we believe in. So if anyone is doing Xamarin Forms and they want to have a look at what we're doing or they want to contribute back, then that's a great thing. It really helps with the Xamarin community, especially even getting involved, putting in bugs or anything. So any help you can give would be great. So talk about Xamarin Forms. So traditionally, Xamarin, as Alec went through before, you've got your iOS UI, your Android UI, and your Windows UI with your shared backend. But what Xamarin Forms is, which was released over 2 years ago now, is a shared UI code. So when you do iOS or Android or Windows UI in the traditional sense, you're using what an iOS developer would use. So an iOS developer uses a UI table view controller. In Xamarin iOS, traditional way, you use a UI table view controller. Whereas Xamarin Forms, you have has its own API that you use, which works across all the platforms.
When you talk about Windows there, you're talking about Windows Phone, aren't you? You're not talking about Windows Desktop.
Well, Windows UWP, it's the same thing now.
Right. So
Yes.
I can.
Yeah. So, well, Windows here, Xamarin isn't really the Windows because Windows is its own UI anyway. So when we say that there's Windows, Xamarin Forms supports Windows, it's just supporting the .NET framework, whichever UI you use. So that can be Windows RT or Windows UWP, which is the new one. So that's the Windows UI. So UWP will work on Windows Phone and the desktop. So Xamarin Forms. So you can see here, this is a UI. I mean, it's pretty hard to see. Up here we've got a content page. In here we've got a profile photo, an icon, a stack layout, and then we've got like an entry element with a username, another entry element, and then a button to do the login. And then down here we actually put it into a tab page. So this here, this works in a common library, which works on iOS, Android, and Windows. So you can see here on the Windows it comes out, you've got your tabs at the top, tabs here on Android, and your tabs down the bottom on iOS. You've got all your entry fields, and then your password, and then your buttons as well. So one code base, 3 different platform UI, and you'll notice that that is the native looking and feeling UI. So what comes in Xamarin Forms? So there's 40 pages, layouts, and controls. You can build code in XAML or build the UI in XAML or in code. There's two-way data binding, so that's sort of your MVVM style development. So there's a navigation engine built in. So when you're pushing and moving between pages, you're still doing that in a common code base.
When you're saying XAML there, my WPF experience, would it be able to drag and drop my WPF XAML and put it into Xamarin Forms and have something similar happen?
It's not an exact match, so that won't actually be. I mean, it'll be similar. It'll be if you have knowledge of the WPF XAML, then you can use that in Xamarin Forms. But as far as it being compatible, it's not fully compatible.
Right, but it's sort of 70%, 90%, 1%?
I don't know, what would you say the percentage is? Who's 75%?
The names of things are slightly different.
Yeah.
In some cases, but Xamarin is progressively implementing a lot of the things that are in Windows XAML in their own XAML. So
Yeah.
You might touch on this later.
Yeah, I will. But the one thing to note is with WPF, the XAML is quite forgiving, whereas if you do bad XAML in Xamarin Forms, because you're on like a mobile device, you still can get yourself into trouble. So you really got to make sure that you learn how XAML works and you learn the framework before you start just putting things together and building huge pages that are going to be really slow. Animation API, which is really good. A dependency service. So this dependency service is kind of like an ISC container, but the Xamarin Forms version of it. I mean, a lot of people do use that, but I know a lot of people that if you're using like an MVVM framework, you don't actually need the dependency service that they have built in. And then a messaging center. So some of the MVVM frameworks have a messaging center, but there's also one built into Xamarin Forms as well. So the types of pages. So this page is gone. We shouldn't use the carousel page. It's being replaced by a carousel view. So that means you can have multiple of them in a single page. You've got your content page. So anytime you have any content in Xamarin Forms, it's always going to be in the content page. And then you've got your master detail. So that's up the top right. You have your little hamburger menu when it opens up opens up from the left. A navigation page and a tabbed page. So normally you can actually embed multiple of these in each other, so you can actually have multiple navigations. So you can actually have a tabbed page inside a navigation page, or you can actually do it the other way around, where you have a navigation in each of the different tabs. You can have a master detail, or you can have a tab page inside a master detail of the detail. So you can actually put these different pages together to build the specific UI that you want. But primarily, the simplest way is you would have like a tab page and then a content page, or you have a navigation page and then a tab page and then a content page. So you can put these together to sort of do whatever sort of UI you want. So the different types of layouts. So a lot of the layouts I don't actually use, and I don't think people recommend using them. So the absolute layout, you can still use that one. Stay away from the relative layout. Grid is probably one of the layouts you really want to get to know well, because you can kind of build anything with a grid. And then a stack layout's quite a nice simple one. A content view you can use, which is just a container for some content. And then the scroll view. Frame, you can kind of see it here, is like a content view, but it's got some rounded edges. So depending on actually what you want to build within your UI. So there's all these other little controls. So you've got like entry elements and your labels and your pickers. One thing that actually is really small here, but this should be a lot bigger, is the list view, because most pages, or every maybe 50%, 60% of pages use a list view, and it's really fast and it's really good for making complex UIs and putting them together in a nice way. So Xamarin Forms is like a DSL, and it's an abstraction, so you can use it in a common library. But at points in time, you actually want to have more native code. So just say you want to have some extra padding around something that's actually not available in the Xamarin Forms toolkit. You can create what they call a custom renderer. So you've got your button. On Android, you can have your button renderer. On iOS, you can have your button renderer, and then you can have a Windows Phone button renderer. If you inherit from one of the built-in controls, then you can just have a button renderer for iOS, and you don't have to have the Android ones. The Android will just use the default renderer. So this is for when you need to have the native code, and you want to take Xamarin Forms further than what's built in. So there's a dependency service. So you can see here, text-to-speech, it's a native API. So Xamarin Forms doesn't have any built-in functionality for text-to-speech. So here you can see you're creating an interface, so you can speak the text, and then on each platform you can implement it. So you can see you've got iText-to-speech here. This is the iOS version, so this AV speech synthesizer is what an iOS developer would use. You can see it's still in C#, so you're still familiar with what's actually happening there, but it's the native APIs. So that would have to happen on Android for it to work on the Android platform as well.
Sorry,
You're right.
it's not related to this topic, but what version of C# is used?
The latest version.
And in Xamarin Studio as well.
Yes. Yeah. So they'll always be onto the latest version. Actually, they had the new version of C# before Visual Studio did.
Okay, thanks.
And then you can register the dependency service via an assembly reference there. So this is a way to have an abstraction, which is the abstraction is this, and then it goes down to the native, and that's the built-in Xamarin Forms way of doing it. As I said, if you use like a framework or something, then you'll have an IRC container, and you can put it directly in the IRC container. And then you've got the dependency service where you do text-to-speech. So if I've implemented an iOS and then I haven't implemented that native code on Android, then I'm going to get an error there because that API is not going to exist for Android. So Xamarin Forms has navigation built in. You've got the navigation page. You can't do navigation without a navigation page. So every time you have a page, it has to be inside a navigation page. So you can do pushing and popping. So mobile, and well, specifically Xamarin Forms has an idea of pushing and popping. So pushing and popping is when you actually navigate to another page. Pushing modally is actually navigating to a page that's not a page that you can go backwards through. So it actually appears from the bottom. So there's a messaging center, so you can see here on this API. So just say you've got two parts of an application. You've got like a menu down here, and you've got a list of items here. Messaging center allows you to say subscribe to when something's changed in my list, and then from over here I can actually send it. So subscribe, and then send. So you're sending and subscribing. So you can see here on my master page, I'm subscribing to when a new trip expense is added, and then on the detail page I'm sending it across. So what's new in Xamarin Forms? It works. It works better. Well, it was debatable if it worked before. So you might have seen some things on the internet, people saying very nasty things. The truth is now, a lot of that stuff isn't relevant. So if you look up an old Stack Overflow post or an old Reddit post, a lot of that stuff that people are saying isn't actually true anymore because that was with a really early version of Xamarin Forms. So I'm glad that I can say that I can get rid of all of them. So these two slides are slides that I found in some of my old presentations. Slides where I used to sort of explain Xamarin Forms and the trade-off that you have with it. But I'm happy to say that I don't have to put them in my presentations anymore. Because there's not as much of a problem as it used to be.
The current version of Xamarin Forms, how old is it since it's been less buggy?
How long has it been since? Oh, I'd say it's probably like 6 to 8 months. It's been really solid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they've fixed over 1,500 bugs.
So does that mean there's still another 3,000 bugs to go?
No, actually, I think I'd say that there isn't actually.
There's
Like
about 500 in the bug list.
yeah.
Okay, that's, yeah.
So there isn't. It's pretty solid.
And most of those bugs are ones that you would never encounter.
Yeah.
You'd be confident writing your new app for your large bank with this?
Funny you should mention that.
Yeah. That's what he does during the day.
Right.
It's more performant. It's much more performant. It's actually 5 to 10 times faster than the original Xamarin Forms. With everything that all the features that they've added and the performance improvements that they've made. Actually, I did have this. This is from another presentation. So list views now have cell recycling. So what it actually does is, rather than throw away a cell once it's finished with it, it'll actually keep a bunch of cells around and just replace the data inside the cells. So it's caching UI. So it's actually, it makes it a lot faster, especially with really long lists, if you write the cells in the correct manner. So it's got huge performance improvement. So you can see here, the default is retain element, which is the original. And to recycle it, you hit select recycle element. And that's on the properties of the list view. So the data template selector So it allows, the data template selector is really powerful because it allows you to create a really long list with different types of data in them. So just say like a messaging, your messaging app, when you send versus receiving, you see a different UI. So the data template selector will allow you to have those two different UIs. And then it still support the cell recycling. So you can see here, this is actually a message view model. So it's null if it's an incoming message, it uses the incoming data template. And if it's an outgoing, it uses the outgoing data template. So compiled XAML, so you can see here, traditionally XAML was parsed and inflated at runtime. Now you can actually have an option to have it parsed and turned into IL at compile time. Faster, smaller app size, and you see XAML errors at build time, which is a bit of a nice thing. So you can enable XAML compilation. So this is the whole for the whole application at a global level, and then you can actually turn it off for single pages or just single classes.
When you say XAML compile, so if I'm binding a variable and that variable is misspelled or whatever, it's going to tell me, sorry, tough luck, that variable doesn't exist?
As far as, it's only XAML when you haven't actually done the XAML correctly, but if it's a bindable property, it can't actually pick that up that you haven't done it correctly because it doesn't know what the context is going to be.
Right, okay.
Because that's like a runtime thing.
Yeah. How do I find that sort of bug?
You run the application.
Right.
Oh yes, mfractor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, that is a true. Yeah. You should actually give a demo a bit later.
Yeah, I will.
Okay. Sounds good. So this is borrowed from Matthew, who creates the really awesome mfractor toolkit. So the performance analysis, is that 5 times faster? Is that what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Depending on what you're doing.
Yeah. So when you compile the XAML, it's about 5 times faster. And I just said 15 seconds it adds to the build time.
Yeah, so we had a 40 page up, so that 40 XAML files, and I went through and added XAML compilation across the whole thing. And the performance was noticeably better on low-end devices, with the cost of the build time increase. But it's not that much anyway.
Yeah.
What's the
That
size?
grows anyway.
Pardon?
Size, is it larger or smaller?
The smaller, the app size. With
Yep.
compilation, yeah.
Yep.
Yes, and thanks to Matthew from mfractor. We can give you a bit of a demo. That'd be good, actually. Got some new features in there. So I just wanted to show you some of the stuff that you can actually build so you can get an idea of what you can actually do. So this app, with the original Xamarin Forms, you wouldn't be able to build an app like this. So you can see here. So this, remember I was talking about the data template selector? So you can see here, this is a list view with a data template for this. That's got a list view header up there. And then it's still the same list, but if you come down here, you can see that it's got a different data template there. It's actually a little bit laggy, but on my phone it's really fast.
Is it iOS?
iOS, yeah.
When you have an Android for that,
Yes.
when you have it in Android, did the tabs display underneath, or
The way we did it in this case is we did it the same as like a lot of the apps where they're still at the top, but we made the menu system a bit similar to this where you've got like a nice icon, and because we thought about moving it down to the bottom, but there's a bit of problem with that, like there's an extra maintenance fee with that really, so we left it at the top and just restyled it to how most of the other Android apps are, so it is at the top. Yeah. Yeah, so this is about as far as I reckon you would want to take Xamarin Forms. I mean, but this is consumer facing, so this is for anyone who can go and actually download this app. Primarily, most people are doing business applications with Xamarin Forms, but I guess you can. And as I think if more people get into it, more people start pushing the platform forward, the more consumer facing applications will be able to build with it. So you can see that you can navigate through it all really fast. It's actually, on this, it's faster than the lag when it comes through the monitor there. So what else is new? Xamarin Forms is open source, so you can actually go and do a pull request if you like. Not a lot of people have. There's been a few, I mean, but not an amazing amount. But this is a cool one. So you can see here, this is a pull request where you can actually embed in the XAML a native bit of code. So this UI label is for iOS. A text view is an Android text view. So as long as you get your, as long as you do the naming right, then you can actually do native embedding, but in a XAML format. There's an application class. So this application here, this works in a cross-platform way. So when the application starts, you've got your on start event, on sleep event, and on resume, and that's all handled for you by Xamarin Forms in the cross-platform library.
What are you saying new? Michael, is it that before?
It's new since from 1.0. So it is actually, it's been around for a while, but it is still, I think it came in 1.3. So yeah, shared application class, global events. There is one more event that you get now, which is like a navigation event. So if you've got an app link from a web page coming into your application, then it'll come into your main application. So there's new gesture recognizers. So there's always had the tap. Now there's a pan and a pinch gesture recognizer, which you can use. We've done a bit of that, so it's always good to have it there. So your XAML favorites, they're adding behaviors and triggers. So they're as you said, they're bringing more of the Xamarin, the Microsoft XAML across to Xamarin Forms. Control templates. So these are like container templates. So you see here the content, at the top and the bottom there, that content is actually shared between every page, and then you just replace the inner content. I didn't actually go into it. But so the control templates is, if I navigate to a new page, I can still have that header and footer there. It's a bit like a master page in ASP.NET. So effects, they're like so custom renderers are good because you can do native code, but people wanted like a light version where they didn't actually have to do a lot of inheritance. They could just add a feature on to a Xamarin Forms control. So the effects is you basically attach an effect to any Xamarin Forms control, and then you can modify the native control properties. And it's done via composition, so there's no inheritance involved. You can add multiple effects to the Xamarin Forms controls. So you can see here, adding to the effects here, it's adding a Xamarin border effect. So every controller that you add this to, it adds a border effect, and then on here, your border effect is changing it to purple with a border width of 2. So what you don't actually see there is, well, you can see here, this is a UI color. That's a native, and basically a native API, and this layer is a native API as well. So there's been lots of nice little improvements. A scroll view. So the scroll to async, you can get the scroll position, the X and Y. The list view, it's got separator enhancement, so you can hide the separator. List view header and footer, it's a great one. Use it in most projects, so it's really good to have that there. And pull to refresh, which is nice to have. Some preview features that were announced at Evolve. So we're not supposed to use the carousel page anymore, but the carousel view is a new one that Xamarin have been working on. It's still not released yet. I think it's still in a pre-release state. So you can't actually see it here, but across there is a carousel that goes side to side, and you can see different pictures. So you can actually, because it's a view, you can actually have multiple carousels on one screen. So you could have a bunch of them and scroll through them.
So I can scroll vertically and then scroll horizontally.
So the carousel view is only horizontal,
Yep.
and the scroll view is horizontal and left and right. The carousel view is a little bit different to the scroll view because you can put any data in there, and it's actually paged. So you see here, this is like an image with a title, when I push across, it'll become a different image with a different title, and you can just swipe it nicely.
I assume that's going to give me an event saying, oh, okay, you need to provide the image for the next one at this point. I'm not going to load them all up at that time.
It will do that for you. So you have a data set,
Yep.
and then you'll have like a data
So I have to
template.
bind to that data
Yeah.
set and
Yeah. Yeah, so the template, I mean, you can have different templates, but you can have the same template, and then you just replace the data. And Forms will actually be smart for you as far as recycling and reusing things. And yeah, so you can customize it as well. Uses recycling. There we go, you can see it. So that's the scroll view there. Sorry, that's a list view there, and then that's the carousel view.
I could put the carousel view though into a list view and have a whole page full of them.
I don't know. Have you tried
I
it?
don't think anybody's tried that yet.
Yeah,
It'd
they're
be
pretty
interesting
game.
to see what happens.
Yeah, it might
I could
work.
crash my phone.
Yeah. I mean, I think it should work.
Well,
We could try it.
yeah. Give it a go this afternoon.
Yeah. So there's a XAML previewer. So this is not a designer, this is a previewer. So you write your XAML code and then you can actually see how it's going to look on the different platforms and the different devices.
Is this activated already in Visual Studio or?
It just is in preview of Visual Studio.
Yeah, I don't use Visual Studio, so I don't know. But the Xamarin Studio one works provided that you use the Xamarin base classes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and the Xamarin Studio one is only in the pre-release Xamarin Studio.
No, it's in,
Was it in the? No, it's in.
it's in the alpha version.
Yeah, so in Xamarin Studio you can choose a different channel. So you can say I want to do alpha or what was it?
It's alpha beta.
Alpha beta, and then
Is it working with Share Project or is only working with Android or iOS?
No, it works with everything.
yeah.
Yeah, so with iOS and Android together, you can see which one it is.
So app links and URL navigation. So see here, all the mobile devices allow you to have like a link, which is a web link. If it was on a desktop, it would go to the website, but in the app, it actually opens up the native application. And Xamarin Forms allows you to have an event when it comes in. Data pages, so you can take an Azure data set and you can have pages automatically generated, and they'll look nice, and you'll see like you've got a contact or an event, depending on what you actually want to do. So that's really good if you want to prototype something or you just have a bit of data that you want to show people, and you want to have it nicely designed without having to roll your own UI design. And then themes as well. So there's a light and a dark theme. So this is a pretty good one. So native embedding allows you to take an iOS or an Android native control, or a Xamarin iOS or a Xamarin Android native control, and embed it directly into the hierarchy of Xamarin Forms. So you can see here this fab button, which is like an Android native or a Xamarin Android native. You can put it directly into the control hierarchy, and the same with this split view controller. So you can see here, this is a shared project. So if it's Android, creating a new fab button and adding that fab button into the control hierarchy. So some real world tips. So you're still on a phone with limited resources, even though XAML is nice and easy just to put something together. You still have to be aware that you are on a phone, and you should actually research into how to write Xamarin Forms views in a performant manner. So it's not as forgiving. Xamarin don't own the underlying platforms, so they're still limited by what they can actually do with it. So you still, well, when I build Xamarin Forms pages, I still build them with performance in mind. So to have a faster view, so stack layouts, if you're using a stack layout, it encourages you to do lots of nesting, which is not good in Xamarin Forms. Grids are great for reducing the nesting, because you can create a single hierarchy with everything laid out onto a single page. Avoid the relative layout, and reduce layout cycles. So if you have a grid and you're using lots of auto heights, then it's going to have to, when some data changes, then it's going to have to recalculate the whole grid and recalculate the whole page in many cases. So if you're using a grid and you're using like static heights and star, less chance of having a layout cycle. So Xamarin Forms power controls. So grid, I talk about grid a lot because if I'm building a Xamarin Forms view, I'm probably going to use the grid. The great thing about the grid is you can layer things on top of each other. So you just say I have like a photo up here and then I wanted to have like a play button laid on top of it. A grid would allow me to put a photo here and then put another button there, or put another button there. And that also works on different device sizes. So if you've got a phone, the grid will expand out for the tablet device, depending on how you actually set it up. And it's actually quite easy to use. It's not much more difficult than a stack layout. And it works well with the XAML. So I mentioned that as well. And it's easy to reduce nesting. And I mentioned before the list view. I showed you a demo of that. So the cell recycling really speeds up your views. The data template selector. Yeah, it's use the grid if you're creating like a view. And then if you're creating like a long list of things, then you use the list view with the cell recycling. And avoid adding and removing when the binding context changes. You don't want to change the layout when the binding context changes. You want to sort of have a sort of static layout and just replace the content inside. So images on Android have major problems, just in general, and Xamarin Forms can make it worse. So there's going to be performance and memory issues. So if you use FF Image Loader, it's got image caching and image resizing, because what actually Android does is it takes any image you have and converts it into a bitmap. So what FF Image Loader will do is it'll actually resize it to the smallest possible image that it can be, and before it displays it, and it'll also cache it for you.
So basically, convert it to the thumbnail image if you want to use it.
Sorry?
Is it converting it to the thumbnail image?
The
Thumbnail.
thumbnail, yeah. Yeah, so it's making it a small thumbnail.
Okay. And can we use FF Image Loader in the list view as well?
Yes, yeah, definitely use it in a list view, because that's where you're gonna. Because if you've got an Android application, you got a list view with images in it, and you're just going up and down, and you're gonna crash the
so we
phone.
don't need to
Crash
create
that.
the thumbnail version of the image in our
No,
browser.
you can use FF Image Loader to do that.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, and it actually has transformations as well, so you can do transformations like make it into a circle and things like that. It's pretty cool. If the image is local, we can still have issues. Sometimes in the past we've just done a full native cell for Android, because if it's listed, sometimes it's really easy just to do the cell natively, and then you have a custom cell renderer for Android, but then iOS can use Xamarin Forms still.
Is it still load the full image, or
I don't actually know, it doesn't. No, it's pretty smart in the way that Android does it. Yeah, so if you're using the Android native image view, it just loads what it needs to load. Yeah.
It won't resize it, but it does have a kind of internal cache.
Yeah. Yeah, so one good thing to look at is the Xamarin plugin. So Xamarin Forms is PCL, so it'll actually run, you develop it once and it'll work on all platforms, but a lot of the native APIs aren't. So you need to grab, like, just say you want connectivity or your battery status or your photos, grabbing one of the Xamarin plugins that are available from the Xamarin components is a really good way just to add some native features to your application without having to write any native code. Photo property change if you're using or you're doing MVVM, because it'll automatically do your property changed. ACR user dialogues, which is like an open source toolkit, allows you to. I mean, a lot of time you just want to have some user dialogues where you can ask the user a question, and you don't want to have to figure out how to do it because there's no real way to do that in Xamarin Forms. So put user dialogues in, and then you've got like pretty rich user dialogue framework. And then just because I'm really happy that I don't have to put these into my slide presentations anymore, I'm just going to burn them again. Yeah. Questions?
If I'm a traditional .NET developer,
Yes.
and I need to learn all of this because I've never done any of it before, where do you recommend I start?
Xamarin University. I mean, the way I learnt is by writing code and building apps.
Yeah.
That's the way I find. There is Xamarin University as well. The Xamarin documentation is great. So like even just going on to the Xamarin website, looking at the documentation, everything they have, that's really good. Yes, and really good examples. If you have a look at their GitHub page, like github.com/Xamarin, there's lots of like code samples there you can just download and.
The recipes are great, actually.
Yeah, yeah, their documentation's amazing.
Just follow James Montenegro.
Yeah. Any other questions yet?
If you were building a new app and you were going to choose between just Xamarin Forms by itself or Xamarin Forms with fresh MVVM or something like that, or some other approach, what sort of factors would lead you towards those two? One of the
Are you talking about in Forms of the UI toolkit or just with Xamarin Forms?
yeah, just as a you're starting a new app. Am I going to use Xamarin Forms? Am I going to use Xamarin Forms with fresh MVVM, or am I going to do it some
Yeah,
other
we
way?
do it. We have like a standard solution architecture that we use on all our applications because it works well. And whenever we come back to an application, we know that it's going to have everything we need in there. We know how the application fits together, so that's fresh as part of that. User dialogues, slide over kit. So we kind of like keep it standardized as much as possible.
So what does fresh add that you don't get out of the box with Xamarin Forms?
Well, it's like convention over configuration. So it's got the ISC container. It allows you to push between page models or view models without having to go into the UI. So it actually has that abstraction between the UI and the page model or the view model. So it's that increasing the amount of how well you're doing MVVM. And the structure, like it makes you sort of think in a more cross-platform way and decoupled way, really. I can give you a presentation on it. There's lots of there's lots of things.
Can we have a label inside the toolbar item?
A label inside a toolbar item.
Okay, let me say what
No.
my problem. My problem is I want to have a shopping cart, and the only way to have it in the navigation is adding as a toolbar item, and it needs to be an icon, but I need a badge on the icon, right? So is there any way around it?
Yeah.
You have to use the toolbar control in Android, and you can't rely on the tab navigation comes with it because it uses the old action bar, which you can't put icons inside of. But the toolbar is a view group, so you can put anything you want inside of it. So you could actually add your custom icons.
But that's for Android only, and then there's iOS as well, which you need. But in iOS, like the native platform, you can put any like view you want to in there.
Except as Xamarin Forms, there's no toolbar renderer.
Yes.
So I'm using XAML, and
Yeah, so one of the shortcomings of Forms right from the very beginning has been that there's no toolbar renderer, so you can't actually subclass it and create your own objects to go in the toolbar. However, it is open source, so if you're confident, you can have a go and do it yourself.
Yeah, in Xamarin Forms, when you go into that area of trying to do funny things with toolbars, you get yourself into it can take a lot of time and a lot of development effort.
If you
because
just need to put a badge on an image though, I think a hacky way to do it that might work is to create two images and compose
yeah,
them together.
Yeah.
like, just replace the icon, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Have
And
10 icons instead of
it's simple.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a hack, but if that's the visual effect you want, it might work. In
Or-
an ideal world, we'd have a toolbar renderer where because the toolbar on both platforms can contain anything, you'd be able to put your own renderer in there and make it contain anything. But that world doesn't exist yet.
We
Yeah.
can do like a hack this afternoon and help you build this.
Yeah. Any more questions?
So would you do, say, most of your apps now in Xamarin Forms with your
Yeah.
renewed trust in it?
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. And Xamarin University is now doing Xamarin Forms, aren't they? They're doing Xamarin Forms as like a core component, or I saw a blog about it.
The main curriculum for certification now is forms-based.
Okay.
We've always had forms.
Yeah, always had forms, but now it's actually more of a major product in, yeah.
Can you make your slides available to us?
Yes, I can.
Sorry, one last question. Is there any performance differences between using the XAML into like an XAML version or the code version, like C# version?
Not with a compilation, I don't think. Is there much? There's no difference now with compilation.
Not really, no.
And is it like the previewer can show the binding as well?
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool.
If you use the, at the moment, if you use the Xamarin base classes, then yes, it can. If you subclass those and make your own base classes, it's not yet able to do those.
You can use a view model locator as well.
Yeah, you can.
Because they're like the Gorilla player, it can't do anything, just like static page, but that's useless.
Yeah.
That can do it.
James Montenegro has a really good blog post about how to do it.
Sorry?
James Montenegro, he's one of the Xamarin guys from the US. He's got a blog post about how to do it.
Awesome. Thanks.
Great. Ian's going to come up now and mention a few great sponsors and providers.
Yeah, just wanted to take an opportunity to plug some of the sponsors for today. Zuni, I haven't actually used any of the Zuni controls, but they provide cross-platform controls for the Xamarin